Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of HR Secrets, where we explore various HR topics and provide you with interesting facts about the HR industry. My name is Jordan, and I'm here with my partner, Victor, to host the podcast. So sit back and enjoy.
For this month's podcast episode, the theme is employer branding and recruitment. We are pleased to have Emily Cornett-Ching, a senior HR and talent specialist at Envol Strategies, to join us speaking on this topic. So Emily, could you please introduce yourself and your role at Envol Strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Victor, and thanks, Jordan, for having me. So my name is Emily Cornett-Ching. As you mentioned, I am a senior HR and talent specialist with Envol Strategies. So Envol, really, we focus on business and people solutions. We do that for companies who are in crisis, companies who are in growth, and really everywhere in between. And this can be smaller startup organizations, all the way up to, we work with larger established organizations like the University of Ottawa. So some really great clients that we've gotten the opportunity to partner with. And then as a senior HR and talent specialist, really I support with all things people related, whether it is process optimization, we'll support with technology implementation, employee relations, anything from getting that panicked phone call of, hey, we've got this employee about to go on leave. What do we do? What are our obligations? To more more retained relationships. So whether it's that one-off call or we're actually acting as an HR department for a company, that's another way that I personally work alongside our clients. So when they call that HR department for their business, it's me on the other end supporting with whatever they need. So it's really dynamic role where we get to kind of support organizations through achieving their objectives through people.
Great.
Yeah, I guess let's move on to our next question. Yeah, so what led you to pursue a career in human resource consulting?
Yeah, great question. So, like many people, I don't think I ever woke up one morning thinking, oh my gosh, HR is the career for me. I always had a passion for people. I always had a passion for problem solving. And so how I ultimately kind of found my way was just through speaking with a lot of different people who are in business. I imagine you do the same. Have you two kind of had the opportunity to reach out for some informational interviews with people in the industry?
No, yeah, definitely. Reaching out to individuals in the industry really kind of helps us learn more about specific industries or different professions, and it really helps us in really any networking events or different environments, which can help us engage others more or even know more about a specific topic.
Yeah.
Totally.
And for me, it's just it's me attending networking events through a variety of different concentrations, such as finance or accounting, where I just got obtained information for professionals and then insiders on how the industry works, and then I guess this type of information just piques my interest, and then that's how I got into plan to concentrate in accounting and finance.
Totally. Yeah, because the reality is when we're a student and before we join a university or kind of pick our career, we don't actually know what a lot of these careers entail. Yes, I can say HR, but I can bet you that a lot of people don't actually really know what a day-to-day as an HR consultant or any person in HR, what that day-to-day actually looks like. So the best way is exactly what you two have done, and I'm sure many of your colleagues and peers have done as well, and that is just through talking to people and building that network. And so I was fortunate to be able to do that, whether it was people who I already knew or even just reaching out on LinkedIn and trying to connect. And I started to learn a little bit more about HR and what it actually meant, what the opportunities were there. And the people that were in HR, I found were really, really satisfied with their careers. And so it made me excited and it made me want to pursue that more. And then as I continued to learn through my education and now throughout the years of my career as well, it's just continued to be the right path for me. That's not to say that in 10 years, 15 years, it still will be. I think I try not to be too naive in thinking that it's a linear path when you start your career, but certainly it is extremely fulfilling for what I get to do now. So that was kind of my journey.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So on to our next question, Emily. So what are some advantages in hiring a HR consulting company to help with recruitment process and employer branding?
Yeah, good question. Thanks for asking. So Certainly there's a lot of just financial advantages from the capacity standpoint. You want the people in your organization to focus on the things that they really add value doing. And so when it comes to things like recruitment and employer branding, it makes a lot of sense to bring in an expert who can do that at a little bit lower of a price than what you might be paying for a typical agency for recruitment, for example. The expertise is a big one. So understanding what's going on in industry, being able to really provide you that advice. One way that Envol works a little bit differently is that we are always committed to a sustainable fit. So we might not always tell you what you want to hear, but we will always certainly tell you what we know and believe is truly beneficial for your business. So whether that's from a recruitment standpoint or from an employer branding standpoint, you'll always get access to up-to-date knowledge. We do actually have an in-house design team for the employer branding piece, which is really helpful as well and differentiates us in a way against just working on that stuff internally. But really at the end of the day, when it comes to things like employer branding, our job as a consultant is not to define that for you. Because really an employer brand is your identity. It's who you are as a business. And so our role within that is to help you identify it, help you, maybe package it up in a nice little bow and then really leverage it for what you need. But we're not going to be the ones who are creating this whole new brand for you. But we do certainly have the expertise to support you to get there and achieve some of the business objectives through recruitment and through employer branding.
So speaking on like what you guys generally do, have you guys ever really encountered companies that ask you for help and they have not a single clue on how to start with their recruitment and employer branding?
Yes, so I would say that quite frequently that is the case. Absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about this later on when we're talking about the challenges of employer branding, but really it is a bit of an amorphous concept to many people. And so I think it starts with a little bit of education in that, it doesn't require a multi-thousand-dollar investment into this big project to do employer branding. Really, it shows up in how you talk to your people. It shows up in your policies. It shows up in your programs at work. And so recruitment and employer branding, we actually see go hand in hand very closely. And when we work with you on recruitment, we're also working towards building and leveraging your employer brand. But yes, I think certainly it starts with, what is this? How can we best use it in our organization? And then it goes into the action planning from there.
All right, great.
Yeah. Just speaking more upon like the recruitment process, like what do you think are some like effective recruitment methods for like attracting like applicants in general?
Yeah, okay. So I would say, kind of going back to organizational goals and objectives, it really starts there in terms of attraction. Who are you actually trying to attract? Are we looking for, more junior level employees? Are we looking for laborers or a little bit more blue collar folk? Are we looking for senior leaders? Are we looking for technical people? Because how you attract those people and where you go looking for them is certainly going to differ based on the profile that you're looking for. So we'll always start there in terms of who we actually need. We also, employer branding is a big part of attracting those people. So if you are already known in the community for the employer that you are, then ultimately you're going to be attracting the right people versus people that, might get the job, but then find that the culture of the company doesn't actually align with what they are looking for. Some other just tangible ways, social media, certainly keeping an active presence there and then making sure to promote whenever you have active jobs. Referral programs, we always recommend a referral program for companies, whether it's just a small incentive, like a $25 gift card for dinner one time, but the best hires repeatedly have come from referrals. So make sure you have something like that in place. Community involvement is really big too. Again, thinking back to that profile that you're trying to hire. So if you're looking for technical people, let's get involved in some of these tech events, some of these conventions that are going on, and let's send our own employees. So if you're giving some kind of budget, let's call it a learning and development budget, where people can then attend these events, they're actually an ambassador for your company. They are teaching other people about these opportunities in an organic way and not a way that feels like we're selling it and kind of pushing it down anybody's throat. So I think that network piece is really, really important. We've moved away from what we call a post and pray model. And that's where you're posting a job and you're just kind of hoping that the right person is going to apply. And that may happen. But if you want to get the top talent and you want to be able to choose between the best people, you're also going to need to get out there and do some sourcing and some outreach where you're contacting people, whether it's through Indeed, LinkedIn, good old school Boolean search through Google, and you're finding the profiles that you want and then letting them know about your opportunity as well.
Yeah, sounds great. So just as a follow-up, it's like, do you see like different recruitment strategies like more like effective in like attracting like different generations of like workers? Like for example, like a younger worker, like how would you like attract them compared to like someone that might be like a bit more older or more experienced kind of thing?
Yeah, interesting question. So, I mean, what I will say first as a caveat is from an HR perspective, it's rare that you're going to try and target people based on age, just because that can get you in a lot of trouble. But you certainly can target different demographics, different skill sets. And so 100%, I would say there are differences in how you go about doing that. For example, Craigslist is a job board that I would say is much more targeted towards laboring roles or kind of more blue collar side of things. Whereas if you're posting a job on LinkedIn, you're much more going to find the professionals and those people who are in like business and corporate roles. So there are certainly ways to target your strategy based on the type of role that you're looking for.
So like you touched on a bit of the recruitment process of like posting a job. So just to go more in depth about it. So what is the recruitment process like at Envol Strategies, and how has COVID-19 pandemic affected this process?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, so Envol, it's an interesting one because our recruitment process actually has really evolved over the past couple of years as our company has grown and really seen a lot of growth. So at first, our process was very, I'll say, customizable. So it was a few different meetings with these candidates, and it was more than just trying to fit a candidate into a predefined role or into predefined structure. We actually had the privilege of being able to kind of build out positions based on these candidates, based on the skill sets that they can bring. And in a smaller business, what many of you will likely experience is you wear a lot of hats. So even though you join the company, you're not a marketer, you will certainly be doing some marketing in your new HR role. So really we look for people who are willing to do the work, who have that potential more so than somebody who checks all the boxes. And I would say that still remains the same. What's changed is there is a little bit less flexibility in terms of designing roles around people when they first start. Of course, we're huge on, recognizing potential and then framing roles and building out around that. But when you first start, certainly now we have a much better idea of what that structure of our organization actually looks like, what we're going to need to fill the gaps and get us where we want to be to achieve our vision. So it's phone interview. It's right now with COVID, to answer your question, video interviews. It's been really interesting to never meet somebody physically face to face and still make a hire, which we have done. It has meant that we've been able to hire some people out on the East Coast, which we've previously done, but more so now because it's just so normalized to have that remote workforce. And then, so in terms of process, I guess to summarize, phone interview, generally a couple of interviews with our team, our leadership team, meet and greet. We'll always do the reference check. Our goal behind reference checks is not to, so to say, confirm what you've been told by the candidate, but more so it's really to set them up for success. So how can we best work with this person? Because we've already made the decision that we want to hire them. And then after the reference is going to be the offer, and then we'll bring them on board the team.
So like you said, everything's been online or over phone calls. Do you still feel like you still clearly get to know the person and think that they're like, I don't know, like perfect for the position that they're applying for? Or is there like little things where you're just like, it's tough to find right now, but you still believe that that person's the right fit?
Mm-hmm. It's a really good question. And I think it's something that a lot of organizations are, struggling with a little bit because it's just something that we're not used to, making these kind of hires without actually being able to physically meet and interact with somebody. We have a very, I would say clear culture at Envol. You know, we'll meet somebody and within maybe 10 to 50 minutes, we'll have a pretty good idea. And I wouldn't say that we're 100% right because nobody ever is. But we have a pretty good idea of if they would be someone that would be successful within our environment or not. So in terms of feeling confident that we're making the right choice, I would say it hasn't been impacted massively by the fact that we haven't been able to meet them in person. But it certainly feels different. So as an example, you know, we onboard and everything is remote. And then we just did a gift drop off for the holidays. So I physically got to see a few of our team members that I've been working with for months for the first time dropping off this gift. And it was just such an interesting feeling. You just want to go grab a coffee with them. It's like, oh, I miss this, you know, once you actually get a sense of what it could be like. But for what it is, you know, I'm grateful that we're keeping everyone safe, and I'm grateful that it's working pretty well for what it is. So.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Like, just transitioning to like the employer branding aspect of this. Like, what do you consider to be like the most challenging aspect of employer branding, and how do you or like Envol Strategies handle this challenge, kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we touched on it a little bit before, and so a little foreshadowing, but I do truly think that the most challenging part about employer branding is just the fact that it's kind of this foreign concept to a lot of people. And so what that means is to get buy-in from leaders, it can be a little bit hard in terms of how is this valuable? It can be hard to even think, you know, where do we get started? Like, sure, I want to improve our employer brand, or I want to find out what it is and use it, but I have no idea how to get started doing that. And so I think that's the biggest challenge. In terms of addressing that challenge, you know, we really try to come from a standpoint of employer brand is truly just everything that you do. It does not have to be this standalone. And in fact, it should not be this standalone program or initiative, because the way that you facilitate your hiring process speaks to your employer brand. The way that your job ads are written, the way, for sure, content plays into it. I think a lot of people really envision content strategy when they think employer brand. And that is 100% true. We do want to keep that content you know, consistent and promoting the employer brand, but it's not the only thing. It's the policies that you're writing. It's how that handbook is written. Are we saying the word employees, or are we saying team members? Are we saying, you know, the employees, or we and you? Like, how do we talk about ourselves? Do we talk about, for example, clients as clients or clients as partners? So there's a lot of just really small ways that, you know, you can use to help reinforce that brand and reinforce what your team and your people mean to you. So I think that is probably one of the biggest challenges, is just kind of where do we get started, and understanding that it doesn't need to be this huge project with these huge objectives in order to start making small differences and an impact on your employer brand and your ability to hire.
I see. So, like, just to follow on that, like, what do you think are some, I guess, like, effective, general, employer branding strategies, like, that companies can do, like, without, like, having, like, a clear idea of, like, what kind of employer brand image that they want so far, and, like, how these strategies will benefit them as a company, kind of thing?
For sure, yeah. So I think a few things to remember, just thinking big picture. One is be consistent. So don't start committing to, let's say, a content strategy where you're posting 7 days a week if you don't have an internal person or an internal team who's going to run this employer branding initiative. Start with 1 or 2. You can always build up from there. But consistency is really big, because there's no point in starting something and then not following through with it. I would say another just kind of big picture piece of advice is be authentic. So if you are a business that has people, you know, often working 10-hour days, and people are fine with that, they're committed to the mission, but then you're promoting yourself as work-life balance, then when people come join the organization, they're just going to be rudely shocked that this is not what they had envisioned. So make sure whatever you're talking about, that story you're telling, is very much authentic to your company and your brand. And then I would say final thing is, you know, from a big picture point of view, is set metrics. Make sure you can prove the value. So whether that's engagement, whether that is click-through rate, whether it is followers, whether it is your time to hire, make sure you're putting in metrics that you can actually measure to show whether your employer brand strategy is working. And then to answer your question from a more, I suppose, like tangible perspective, so some things you can do, there's internal and there's external. You certainly want both to align. Internally, some fun things are like a newsletter. Book club, we did a virtual book club that we really liked. Getting employees involved in your content. So employee generated content is huge. It's really hard to create all the content yourself, but I'm sure you both are probably familiar with like Instagram and influencers being the ones who are promoting different brands. Kind of a similar idea with your employees, right? They're the ones who are showing that true authentic vision of the company. So get them involved with that. And then just all of your internal communications, whether that's email templates, your onboarding process, all of these are ways to really promote that employer brand internally. And then externally, it's the social media piece, it's the job ads, it's getting involved in the community, supporting causes that are true to your brand, getting involved in things like this, like a student-run podcast, that is making a really great impact on students, aligns very much with our values. And here we get to be here and talk a little bit about our company and showcase our brand a little bit. So those are some tangible examples. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yes, for sure. Thank you for sharing that.
Awesome. Of course.
No, yeah, like for us clubs, like we also want to like kind of have like our bit of not really employee branding or like our club brand. We also want to show people like what we stand for and what our goal is to like share these experiences like you HR specialists, HR experiences with the bunch of students at BD School of Business. So it's great that you're here to talk with us today. And like you said, it also helps with your employer branding too. You also get to reach out to a bunch of students as well. But I would like to ask, what kind of, like you said, like different platforms for employer branding, like what has been the most effective for Envol specifically?
Interesting question. Yeah, so LinkedIn, I would say by far is our highest engagement rate, just where we get the most, like our network is built the most through LinkedIn from an employer brand standpoint. We use Instagram as well. We haven't found that to be really where we get as much engagement and where we find our potential candidates. And then it's community involvement. So Brianna Blaney, who is the founder of Envol, Enrica Bousset as well, who's the VPHR, both are very, very highly involved in the community, whether it's sitting on boards or actively, supporting different charities. So they have had the opportunity to build Envol's brand through that, through the networks, through the connections. And I'm, following in their footsteps and doing the same. So I would say from the ground is really where we kind of continue to build that brand. And then it's also consistency for us. So what you see in our corporate brand very much aligns with what you see in our employer brand. If you talk to people who have worked for us, if you talk to people who have worked with us from a client or a business standpoint, all of them will say very similar things about who we are, how we work. And so I think that consistency piece has been really huge. But yes, certainly LinkedIn would be our biggest platform in terms of employer branding.
Yeah, thank you for sharing so much about like the HR consulting business and the industry kind of thing. I'm just wondering, like for students like considering to pursue like a career in HR business consulting, what advice might you have for them?
Yeah, okay. So take my advice with a grain of salt, as always. I'm certainly not here on any high horse. I've made my fair share of mistakes. But what I would say, first and foremost, because I think this rings true with a lot of students, and I know it would have rung true with me back in the day as a little bit of a keener, so to say, is I really, really recommend that students try to take the pressure off of grades as much as possible. I think that there is this immense pressure on needing to get the best mark in the class, staying up until 4 a.m., feeling disappointed in ourselves for getting an 85 when, Martha, who sits next to us, gets an 87. And at the end of the day, I can promise you, I would probably put money on it, that you are never going to have a future employer ask you what grade you got in macroeconomics. Like, it's not going to happen. So really try to take the pressure off yourself. You're showing up every day, you're doing what needs to be done, and you're on the right path. And so those grades really are not the end all be all of your career. Following up to that, I would say what is really important is building your community, building your network. So the people that you're in school with right now, these are the people that you're going to know throughout your entire career. You're all going into the same business, or at least, parallel businesses where you are going to be able to call on each other when you think, oh, I need an accountant, or, oh, we need HR support. I remember so-and-so from SFU. They were a great student. They always reached out. I would love to work with them. So I've seen personally, the impact that it can have if somebody gets really upset after a project or something goes wrong, and then they're showing up really negatively in class. And a lot of times you don't think about this as a business opportunity and a networking event because you are very comfortable with your classmates, but people remember. So really try to keep that professionalism high and really try to get out there, build the community, just like what you two are doing, just like what all of the members of this association are doing by getting connected and learning more from other people. That's the best thing you can do to start setting yourself up for a career, far more so than that A on that econ test. And I would say that's probably, yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was trying to think if I have any other great advice. But yeah, I think also in alignment with the idea of not putting too much pressure on yourself is don't think like you have to have it all figured out right now. Because it truly is a journey. And I think if you try one job and you don't like it that much, it's still very important that you had that experience. Otherwise, you wouldn't have known whether or not you liked that type of role. So just really give yourself a lot of forgiveness, keep working hard, and things will all work out how they're supposed to.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Like, what's the best way to like contact you if our viewers would like to reach out to you for like more questions or information?
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn, happy to connect, and that's Emily Cornett-Ching. And then my work email, feel free to shoot me an email there. So that's emily@envolstrategies.com. Happy to get involved and share what insight I have and what I can with the students. I think what you guys are doing is great, and I really appreciate Jordan and Victor, you putting this together today. Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun, and hopefully people have got at least one thing that's valuable from today's conversation.
So this concludes our second podcast of HR Secrets. Thank you so much, Emily, for your time and your insights on employer branding and recruitment. I hope you all have a great day, and don't forget to follow our social media for our next podcast episode.